Welcome to Writer Syndrome, a podcast about writing from start to finish. This episode's topic, writer's block. I almost said writer syndrome. That's the title of the podcast, but writer's block. I'm Russ Capasso, and joining me as always is Tim Letney. Tim, how are you? It's been a while.
I'm good. Russ, on a scale of 1 to 10, how blocked are you right now?
I am, 10 being extremely blocked or 10 being not blocked?
You already sound blocked.
I'm actually not blocked at all.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I was lazy today, not blocked. Yeah, it's different. I was lazy today, not blocked. I think most of the times my writer's block is more attributed to laziness and procrastination than it is actually being stuck at writing.
Which I think are different things, right? Writer's block is not, at least to me, and I always think of writer's block as like you're making the time, you're sitting down, and nothing.
Yeah.
It's not like you've got conflicting priorities.
Nope.
It's that like you've made time for yourself and you're just not producing in a way that you want to be.
Blank page, blank brain.
Have you experienced writer's block?
I was thinking about this. No moments that I can think of while I was working on hosts that stood out to me, to be honest. And again, most of the times it was, if I wasn't writing, it was because it was more procrastination or I got distracted. It wasn't necessarily that I sat down and didn't know what to write. There definitely were moments that happened, but not to the point where it was like, oh man, I can't finish this. And it was like 2 months of not being able to do anything. And then I gave up. No. And then if there was any moment where I sat down and I couldn't think of something or I was like a little hung up, I had some things I would do to kind of break through that. I would say the biggest thing I think I ran into more of like word count fluctuation. Like I'd still write something, but I wouldn't get to my goal because maybe I'd get to a point where I was like, I think I'm stuck. I'm going to stop here and then move on, take a break from it. So I think that was like that's how my writer's block kind of manifests itself. I could still get something done, but not, everything that I wanted to. So
I feel like with my current piece, I don't think I hit any significant writer's block. I think I ran out of gas a lot of the time. Mostly what was getting me is conflicting priorities, right? That's what's pulling me away.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, for prep for this episode, I was thinking like, well, when in my life have I experienced it? Because I have, whether it was like writing a paper for school or my grad degree. And definitely the first time that I had tried to write a book in my 20s, I'd hit it. And then I was thinking, why didn't I write for a decade? And was that writer's block? And I think if it wasn't, it at least shares a lot of things, like a lot of the core reasons why writer's block exists, which are kind of like anxiety and fear. This kind of fear. Right?
Yeah,
self-doubt.
We've covered that in the episodes, right? Where you just kind of this self-doubt of like, what is this? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, obviously the brain's more complex than I know, but my gut feeling is that when you are scared, you're tapping into a different part of your brain. It's like your limbic system or something, it's like your fear center and you're like hijacked. You literally can't create if you're worrying, I don't think. And in a way, I like thinking about it as a biological thing because I feel like if you can name it, if you can kind of point to it and feel like, oh, I've been hijacked, like fear has hacked my brain. Yeah. And now I can't produce because I've been tricked.
Yeah.
Just sitting here worrying.
That's funny you say that because maybe I did have writer's block today. Now I think about it. Maybe it wasn't laziness. Maybe it was just, writer's block because I did sit down and I was like, I had 3 tasks I wanted to get done. I should be able to do this, no problem. And there was some background anxiety I had going on. And it wasn't even about writing. There was nothing about writing like that. It was just other life stuff, right? And I think that's actually what like made me lazy and procrastinate today. Did you look up anything like where did the writer's block come from?
I looked a little bit. Like obviously it's very like it's part of the human condition for as long as there's been people writing.
Yeah.
It wasn't coined until like the 40s by like psychoanalysts, and I love their read. So yeah, in 1947, writer's block was coined and first described by an Austrian psychoanalyst, and he said it was caused by oral masochism, mothers that bottle fed, and an unstable private love life.
Okay. What?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I do personally think that it's caused by fear. I think that's the big ticket item here is like ways that you can mitigate your anxiety. And when I felt it, it really is like there's times, right, where we talk about it all the time on the cast where you hit these hurdles, this worry, you're not good enough, you're not original enough, who is this for type of thing.
Yep.
And I think once that swirling doubt gets big enough, it really mutes you. I think there's this fear of failure, and it leads to writer's block.
And anyway, you go down a path of like kind of getting this lazy procrastination thing going on too. It's like, oh, well, you know what? I'll get out of it tomorrow, or I'll deal with it tomorrow, type of thing.
Or
but
worse,
you're
right?
Still, the dark
Think
side.
about the story, the stories you tell yourself where it's like, I'm blocked. And not to sound like too meditative, but the words we use to describe ourselves are a form of storytelling. Like, I'm anger. Like, I'm not like, I'm angry. I'm upset, I'm hungry, or like, it feels so permanent as opposed to impermanent. So you're like, oh, I'm blocked, or like, I can't write, or like, whatever, I'm so lame. And around like meditation practices, which I do think if you are into mindfulness and meditation could be a beneficial tool for getting past block, there's this idea of, you are not, it's just that there is. So like, if you're going to say, I am angry, or, you'd say there is anger, it making it more of like this transient thing that will pass. It's impermanent. So like, and I'll tell you, there's times like when I first started getting into, this is going to sound like a little earthy crunchy, but like yoga and a little bit of meditation, it was some of the most creative moments I'd ever had right after those experiences, because I stopped worrying. I let go of work. I let go of kind of familial obligations, and my brain was just completely opened up to like creativity again. And in this kind of almost childlike way, where like the layers of my adult life weren't weighing me down, and responsibilities, I wasn't wearing it like a suit. I felt very just creative and free. So anything you can do to kind of get into that rhythm, that flow state, I think will, if you're experiencing writer's block, it will help quell that a little bit.
Are there things that you do when you hit writer's block specifically? Like if you're like,
I drink.
I've tried that. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't work at all.
It doesn't work at all.
I'll say when I have been blocked lately, the things that have helped me, it sounds ridiculous, right? But like standing up and like walking my dog, going for a run, anything that kind of gets me away. And I was looking, to prep for this cast a little bit, what suggestions were by, psychoanalysts and professors and, scientists about writer's block. And so much of it, and not to dismiss it, I think it's, important research that's been done, but so much of it was like, do a journal, imitate other authors, make a mind map, do meditation, all super valuable things. But they were all insular, singular things. And I think one important tool to get out of writer's block is talking to somebody, family, friend, anybody, having some kind of community. Because I think as writers, we're isolated anyway. And there's this like, I can do it myself. I'm going to do it all. And sometimes you need a hand, whether that be a therapist, a friend, or
had this podcast even started, it was, it was like our Monday night chats we did weekly, and it was that was so helpful. Like there was times like I think I hit points where I was kind of stuck, here and there. And I know you were definitely stuck at some points too. And we would just like sit there and chat through and like, okay, light bulb. We write a bunch of notes down. Next day it was like refresher, and we like got back into it. So yeah, 100% agree. Like having someone you can just chat with, having that, even that one person, just to connect with. So I had 3 specific things if I was ever hung up on something, or if I do get hung up on anything. I had 3 things I was doing. One, going for a walk. Like you just say, go like taking a dog out. Like going for a walk helps so much. Just even like have that one nugget of a thought, or wherever I was stuck on in my brain, go for the walk and just kind of ruminate on it for a bit. Something would pop, or just to clear the brain entirely and come back fresh was super helpful. Listening to music, that's why I love having a playlist for anytime I'm writing something. So it's like having that helps, just playing in the background. So I think that's also why I never really ran into like a really hard writer's block moment. And reading, honestly, like if I got stuck, start reading whatever book I'm reading, just like read a chapter or 2 and kind of gets me excited and get right back into it. So
reading's interesting, right?
Yeah.
For me, because I completely vibe with the walk and I vibe with the music. Both things. You talk about the walk, like there's sometimes I'll be like ruminating on a problem, whether I mean to or not, my brain will just kind of start making connections, and I'll like come back kind of refreshed with a solution. Music sometimes will completely inspire me. I'll be driving the car. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go home and write, the song hit, it sparked my brain. What's interesting about reading for me is that I think you're right. It can completely, help inspire and break writer's block.
I know what you're
going to say.
But for
me personally, it can cause it too. Like I can't tell you how many times I've gone for a run or, listen to an audiobook, read a book
Yeah.
and contacted you and been like, oh shit, Russ, like this book is just like my book. This character is just like my character. And then I get scared. That it taps into, once again, that like amygdala fear of shit, I'm not good enough. Or if I was good enough, I missed my chance because it already exists. And there's no place for me in this world of books.
Yeah.
Which I know is a lie.
Because, no one has your voice. Your view of these same things that maybe other people have gone through. It's still your voice. So
let's hope that's not for a reason.
Yeah.
Nobody reads books like you write, Tim. But you hear it, that self-doubt, it creeps in, right? And I think acknowledging it and like using one of the many tools, right? I don't think there's a catch-all solution. I think there's a myriad of things like you suggested, little tools to chip away at it, and not being too hard on yourself, dude.
Yeah, I agree. Don't be, definitely, because like that will just perpetuate, the writer's block into the next day and the following day and whatnot. There's some other things I came across too. Exercise is a big one. I think that falls in the category of like go for a walk, right? Doing like some mundane, simple task. I find myself doing that sometimes.
I can tell you things that don't work, right? 100%. Drinking does not work. Drinking may work. It's like lightning in a bottle. If you're like with good friends who are also creative, but I don't think it's like go drink a bottle of wine and you'll feel better. It's like,
no.
Maybe you'll luck out and have a perfect conversation with somebody that'll inspire you, but mostly drinking just creates this cycle of guilt.
Yeah, there's no creativity in drinking alone.
But I think they're all very similar. Drinking, like phone usage and social media usage, and video games. For me, these are like three things that when I do them, I beat myself up, and that creates this cycle of blame, of beating myself up. It's like, and it feels like, oh, if I guilt myself enough for my phone or video games or drinking, then I'll stop. But it becomes this kind of negative ludic loop of attention, right? It's like, you'll never break it. You keep making yourself feel bad. How are you going to make yourself feel better? By doing that same thing again. So
now I'm gonna bring up a big one here, and this is where we'll have our epic, our usual battle over plotter versus pantser thing. So
let's go.
I feel like I didn't, like I said, I definitely hit writer's block moments, but it kind of was in different shapes and forms. It wasn't like I was stuck on something for multiple days at a time. And I think, honestly, like having an outline of the story and the scenes and what I was going to be doing the next day kind of got me into like a motion of process. Of course, I went on tangents and changed things. Of course, you absolutely do that, right? But knowing the next day, it's like, okay, I got to work on these next two scenes. It kind of like keeps the brain, focused, so you know where you're going. So I don't know. For me, that helps.
So I'll say a more naive Tim would argue with you right now. But having gone through this process with you, I think that is a wonderful point. And then if you continue to be stuck where you are, go write something else that you've planned further along in the story. It doesn't need to be linear. Write your conclusion, write your final scene, write some character descriptions, right? Like I think so often sometimes we get stuck. I mean, I was stuck at the bridge. How many times have I been stuck at the bridge?
If I went back and searched for bridge in the text message between us, we'd take up half our text messages.
I have a not so metaphorical bridge to my act too. And I've gotten stuck there because I just didn't know where the hell to go because I didn't plan properly.
Yeah.
Had I known, I could have jumped ahead. Even if I didn't know how to get my characters out of that section, I knew where they were going. I could have just, had I had the confidence at the time and the planning, I could have just started writing those sections. And
if you wrote a section, it was maybe like a scene or two later, you'd be like, oh, I know how to get them out of there and how to get them here, something would have triggered. Or you would have written something like, and then they pulled up in the blah, blah, blah car. You're like, oh, well, they got to get a car. Okay, well, now I know what they need to do to get out of this bridge thing, and
the other thing, right, is it doesn't need to be perfect. I think my way out of it,
that's true,
was ham-fisting it. And that's not a great way to do it. I wish I had more plotting. One of the reasons why my editing process has been so elongated is because I've had to go back and fix all these stupid choices my character, at least the bad reasoning and bad motivation I used to get them to go where they were going. I would have rather that have just been blank than going back and like fixing it. So here's something that I'll argue about. I think this might be a good point. If you have writer's block, do you think that there's some kind of romanticizing? Because if you have writer's block, at least you know you're a writer. You're starting to define yourself as the thing. Is it like, oh, I've got writer's block, I'm just going to sit here with my black coffee and smoke a filterless cigarette with a beret on?
Like when people ask me, what'd you do today? I was like, I had writer's block. As I take another puff of my...
It's like the tortured artist, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so... My thoughts, they're just so heavy.
Can I get a small cappuccino, please? It's the only way I can get through the day. This writer's block.
It's like kind of humble bragging, right? Oh, I've got
writer's block. No, I don't feel that way.
No. Got to go for a writer's walk. That's what you need.
Yeah. You go for a writer's walk, or you listen to writer's music, or never had that feeling. If anything, I would feel more like annoyed and frustrated, being like, why can't I figure this out? I'm just gonna power through this thing.
I guess I mean in more of the description of like, oh yeah, what'd you do today? Oh, I had writer's block.
Yeah,
I'm so special. I'm gifted with the muses aren't speaking to me right now.
Yeah, they hung up on me.
I mean, we joke about that, but I think back in like ancient Greece, there was like writer's block was considered at the time that like. The muses aren't speaking to me. You're not being spoken to by, otherworldly beings giving you inspiration.
Nope, it's your own fault. Just work through it.
Turns out you were bottle fed as a baby.
Or having some problems in the bedroom. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's interesting. I'm trying to think of like if when everyone asks me like, oh, what'd you do today? If it's funny also because I tell someone like, ugh. I mean, it goes either way, right? Someone asks me what I did today. I'm like, yeah, I just wrote 2,000 words in my next novel. It's like, hopefully I'm not saying it that way, but I'm sure it's coming out that way. It's like, yeah, no big deal. As I take another drag from my long cigarette, just wrote 2,000 words of my 100,000 word novel.
And I was being God today and building worlds and playing with people's fates.
You really don't know what it's like until you started creating people, right? The sheer power I have, I could destroy them in the next chapter if I wanted to.
You're talking to like parents of like 5 kids, you don't know what it's like until you make people.
You create people in this fictional world, Aren't you just a single guy? That's not the point. The point is...
I have thousands of children.
No, I think either way you go, you feel a little pretentious, I guess.
Everything about writer's block, right? I think it's always temporary.
Yeah.
Because if it's not temporary, you're not a writer.
Yeah. Got to work through it.
You're something else. So
yeah.
I think it's almost good looking at it like, I don't know, not an injury, but it's something that you can kind of rehabilitate from. Yeah. With like, rest and ice.
Yeah, and I think it's also okay to like just take a day off, like don't, like you said earlier, don't push yourself. I purposely, have built-in days off, and sometimes I'll move it around if I'm just not, feeling it.
Yeah.
Or less just not feeling it. It's not necessarily writer's block. Like I know what I got to do, but I'm just not feeling it. I'll just take the day off and be like, you know what, let me go drink somewhere. No, I'm just kidding. Let me just take the day off. Stay in, watch a movie or something. Before. Yeah.
Right. And I think burnout's kind of the other end of that, where it may eventually, like by breaking the habit, it may lead to writer's block. But initially it's just, you're working too hard.
Yeah.
And whereas I think procrastination and writer's block, they're on like the beginning of it.
Yeah.
I don't think those aren't necessarily caused by burnout per se.
I don't think so. I mean, when you're burned out, you're just toast, and it's not like you're being lazy. It's just your brain has been exhausted. Go recharge and come back the next day.
But I will say, like, the more burnt out you are and the more time you take away from your routine, the more likely you are to get procrastinated as other things start to creep in. Because things do, new priorities like come in, and they will seem just as important as the ones that you were doing 3 weeks ago. And I feel like if you jump further ahead or go back to rewrite something, if you're still blocked, then it's just kind of one of those meditative practices. Then it's maybe free writing for a little bit, just like do, word association, or just write, the first thing, stream of conscious that comes to mind. Go for a while. Anything that can break that little fear loop that you're stuck in will help.
So I don't know. What are you watching, reading anything lately?
I just saw Talk to Me. Which is a A24 horror movie.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it supposed to be really scary Ouija board type of thing, or talking seance stuff or something? Is that one? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
I heard it was pretty scary.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was really good. And same type of thing, that like my complaints as always, where like when you can see the beats, it makes me self-conscious because I'm like, hey, these beats are like mine. Well, all the beats are the same. Like they're the same for everything. So that's all to say that the story it followed 3-act structure. It had like 15 beats, but it wasn't predictable.
Mm-hmm.
But what I loved about it, and I liked its act 3, and I rarely don't, is that I didn't know where it was going. And yet when it ended, it couldn't have ended any other way. And those are my favorite kind of stories, right? Where you don't predict it, it surprises you. And then in retrospect, it's the best ending it could have been. So I really, really enjoyed it. I would urge folks to either go to the theater or to rent it when it's on video on demand in September. It'll be a great little Halloween movie. It was very similar to It Follows.
Okay.
It's kind of like It Follows meets, I don't know, a possession movie like Evil Dead or The Exorcist.
Okay.
With an undercurrent of addiction. Which of course, I've got an addiction in mind. So I was like, oh no, another addiction story. But it just handled it very, very well. So two big dead thumbs up for
nice.
Talk to Me. It sounds like they're going to franchise it out a little bit. It's finding some success, but it's one of the better horror movies I've seen the past decade.
I think that's going to end up diluting it a bit.
I don't know. I mean, it depends. The franchises, quote unquote, always get diluted when the main creatives kind of pass it off and they turn into producers.
Yeah.
I think this is the first feature for both the director and writers. So if they stay involved, I would have faith that they could continue to tell a good story. But if they do franchise it and just sign on for paychecks, it'll probably just be, rinse, repeat the same movie over and over again.
Yeah.
And then reading, it's been slow. Getting a Tarantino book out of the library today. And I went back to the N.K. Jemisin book based on your suggestion.
Yep.
And I read that a bit on my trip to Seattle. So I'm getting back into that. How about you? Where are you at? What are you watching? What are you reading?
I've been also slow in the reading. A lot of shards here. So I finished that Shards of Honor book by Lois McMaster Bujold. It was fun sci-fi book. I'll probably read more in that series. And I'm like halfway through Shards of Earth, which is an Adrian Tchaikovsky sci-fi. I read his other one, Children of Time, which I enjoyed, but it's pretty heavy sci-fi. So it's just like a lot of world building. I mean, there's like the old glossary of all the species and stuff in the back. I'm like, oh my goodness, just give me a story here. Like I'm halfway through and like there's some scenes I'm like, I don't know who's who, what's going on. Watching wise, I actually haven't been watching much. Watching like comedy specials.
Any good ones?
Yeah, watching Tom Segura. He's on Netflix. Yeah, he's pretty good. I watched it. It's weird. I feel like I watched part of one of his specials a long time ago, and I was like, meh. And I watched his newest one. And I was like, all right, this is pretty funny. I kind of like his delivery. And I was like, oh, this feels like his humor, and some of it's just really dumb. And I'm like, this feels like jokes I'd be telling my friend. You know what I mean? So I went back and watched. I went back and watched all of his specials. I was like, all right, he's pretty funny.
I do feel like he's stepped into the whole Left by Louis, the kind of like at least socially accepted role that Louis fulfilled. I know Louis is still releasing comedy and still incredibly funny, but as far as things that you'll show your parents, I feel like Tom Segura.
Yeah, and
I mean, they've done a great job branding themselves, like Segura and his wife, and there's a lot of like podcasts and YouTube shows that they're just everywhere. They've learned how to kind of create their little niche. Like I went to go see Shane Gillis live a few weeks ago, and he's kind of in that same, like, they guest on everybody's, like, on each other's podcast. They've created this nice comedic closed ecosystem thing. So
I watched a bunch of his, and then Bill Burr, the old Boston local. Some of his are good, some of them are like really annoying. Sometimes he goes a little too long in some jokes. I'm like, all right, let's move on.
Did you see that YouTube clip of him? It's years ago when he had hair. I think it was at like Redwoods or Red Bank, where he like had to do 10 minutes, and he
Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. Yeah.
It was amazing.
Rips
It was
Rips on the
amazing.
crowd.
Yes.
So good.
And he keeps counting down. He's just like, 7 minutes to go. And he's just ripping on everyone there. They're booing him. He's
Just
ripping
because of
on
how disrespectful they were to the previous comic, right?
I think that's what it was. He did it for so long that like towards like the 2-3 minute mark, they started cheering him because it was just like,
Yeah.
you know.
A repetition of.
All right. I think that's our episode.
I like it.
Thanks everyone for listening. What are we doing next time?
We talked about doing a very special 3-part deep dive into the beats again.
Yeah.
Because we did our beats episode and we'd gotten some positive feedback about how it was helpful. Yeah. And we blew through all of them in a pretty short podcast. So I think it'll make sense to do a deep dive. Maybe I think you had suggested breaking it into, the 3 acts. So
yeah. It'll be good for me because I'll have just been going through this process again or complete that by then. So it'll be all fresh.
And I'll be finishing up my 6th draft and I can see where I screwed up.
Oh boy.
Hey man, I'm doing great.
You're doing good.
Writers block me.
I'm not gonna gaslight
Rainbow Shield.
Yeah, I'm not gonna gas writers block you. No, you're good. Get out there writing. So
I'll be back.
All right, that's our episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, know someone who might, send along to them. Follow us on Instagram at Writer Syndrome Books. Go there, check it out. We are on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I refuse.
Yeah, don't call it X. But if you do get a moment, go to russcapasso.com or hostthebook.com. Russ has launched his first and best book.
Ooh, wow. Wait till you read the second
only book.
Don't you writers block me. Don't you writers block me.
But you can get Host the Book by Russ Capasso on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or wherever books by cool guys with beards are sold.
That's right. And you can find all our episodes. And if you want to reach out, hit us up at writersyndrome.com.